Okay, so welcome everybody. Welcome to Training Bytes. We're going to talk today about getting better visibility into your data by designing custom views, designing custom lookups, and designing custom filters. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat window on the Ring Central toolbar. At the end of the session, we'll have a Q&A and I'll answer any questions that you have. My name is Gina Thomas. I'm the training manager at C&K Systems and the hostess of Training Bytes, which is a digestible approach to counterpoint training. Have you ever asked yourself, it would be really nice if I go into a table view or a lookup and actually see data that's meaningful to me? Or what about those default filters? They don't have a lot of conditions for me to search for, and I really need to add more conditions. So there is a way that you can save work and time by creating these custom views, custom lookups, and custom filters, and saving them and recalling them for future use. So on our itinerary today, we're going to learn how to create, save, and recall custom views, lookups, and filters. I'm also going to show you how to format and style your data columns, and also how to export memorized reports in the views and lookups. So these next few slides, and there's just a few of them, they're going to cover the basic mechanics of customizing, saving, and recalling, and then I'll actually jump into the software and we'll look at it real time. So in a table view is that little icon on your toolbar that looks like a piece of grid paper. It's this guy right here, and it lives everywhere in Counterpoint. So when you go into a table view and you want to add columns or even remove columns, all you need to do is right-click and select Column Designer. Or another way to access the Column Designer is to come up to this little square right to the left of the item number. That will bring up the Column Designer. Once you've designed your view and you want to save it, you'll right-click and Save As. Now, when you right-click and Save As, Counterpoint will suggest you save it as the default. I will tell you, if you save a view as a default, it becomes the default for everyone in the organization, not just you. So if you don't want to save it as a default, you can actually give it a unique name and recall it later. So when you want to recall your saved custom view, you'll right-click and load, and you'll get a list of all your saved views. By the way, you can have as many saved views as you like. It's SQL. It's unlimited. Lookups. Lookups also live everywhere in Counterpoint, and they're the magnifying glass that you see on the toolbar. If you want to customize a lookup, you can do it a couple of ways. You can right-click and select Custom Column Designer. You can click on the little square to the left of the item number. That'll bring up the Column Designer. Or you can go to Options and select Column Designer. When you're done customizing your lookup, you'll want to save the lookup, and you must go to Options. So right-click will not work. You won't have the option to save. You have to go to Options, Save As, and again, Counterpoint's going to suggest saving it as the default. And again, if you save it as the default, it becomes the default for everyone in the organization. So if you don't want it to be the default, you'll just save it with a unique name. When you want to recall a lookup, and this is what's pretty cool about saving your custom lookups, they actually go to live in this drop-down under Lookup. And you can have as many lookups as you like. It's SQL. It's unlimited. Filters. Filters live everywhere. They live on toolbars and in reporting. If you want to customize a filter, it's this little funnel icon here for the most part. You'll right-click on the filter itself and select Customize. Or you can go to Options and select Customize. When you're done customizing the filter, you'll want to save that filter. Now you can go to Options or you can right-click. If you right-click and save to Database, you can give it a unique name. Counterpoint will not suggest it as the default, just give it a unique name. Or if you do want to save it as the default, you can select Save as Default Filter. But again, just like with lookups and views, if you save it as the default filter, it becomes the default for everyone in the organization. When you want to recall that custom filter, you have several options here. You can right-click and load from database. You can click on the load button, or you can go to Options and select Load, and you'll get a list of all your save filters. You can have as many save filters as you like. It's SQL, it's unlimited. So that being said, I'm going to step out of the PowerPoint presentation and we're going to go into Counterpoint. Now, what I'm about to show you, I'm going to show you under Inventory Items, but you can apply these principles everywhere in Counterpoint, whether you're in Customers, Purchasing, Receiving, Adjustments, Transfers. These techniques work everywhere where you see the table view, the grid paper, a lookup, the magnifying glass, or a filter, whether it's a button or a funnel. Now, before I move forward, just a quick reminder, the new UI, recently used, is recently used modules by you. So those are user specific. My recently used will be different than somebody else's recently used. And you'll have up to 15. So 15 fit on a shelf. Okay? And you can see I've used up all 15 of mine. You can set a favorite by hovering over the module you want to make a favorite and just clicking inside the star, and it will add it to your favorites shelf. And again, favorites are unique to the user, and you can have up to 15. You can see myself, I only have like 7 or 8. If you have trouble locating something in Counterpoint, you forget the path to get there, use a magnifying glass. I'm just going to type items here because I do want to get to items. You'll get a list of options. Here's what I want. I want items. And within this search, you can actually click on this module, and Counterpoint will take you right to the item record. So here I have an item record. I'm going to go to Table View first. Here's my default view. It might be a little different than your default view, but this is my default view. And what I'd like to add to my default view is last cost, because it'd be really nice to compare my retail price 1 to my last cost. So I'm going to right click somewhere where there's data. Now, if I right click over here where there's no data, I get nothing. By the way, everything's a left click unless I say right click. So right click over here where there's no data, no action. So I'm going to come over here where there's data. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to Column Designer. Now, I mentioned in the PowerPoint presentation, I could also come up here. And there's my Column Designer, just one less click. Fortunately, the columns that are available are in alphabetical order, and I know I want last cost. So I could scroll down to the L's, but let me give you a little tip. If you don't want to scroll and you just want to jump to the L's, if you just click on one of these columns and type an L on your keyboard, then it'll jump you down to the section where the L's are, and then you can just scroll from there. To add this column to the visible columns, I can double click, or I can click and then click on Add. I kind of like the double click better. It's a little faster. If I want to change the position of this column, I can move it up, I can move it down, I can hold down my left click and just drag it. Or if I get this far where I say, okay, I want my last cost there, and I click OK, and I say, well, you know, I don't like the position of that last cost column, I can actually left click on the column header and drag. So now I've just changed the position. Okay, so now I've designed a view, and I want to save this view because I don't want everyone to come into a default view and see last cost. So I'm going to save this with a unique name. I'm going to right click somewhere where there's data, because remember, if I right click over here, nothing happens. Right click, save as, and notice Counterpoint at this point is saying, oh, do you want to save it as the default? Well, no, I don't, because the default doesn't have last cost. So I'm just going to name this last cost, and I'm going to click OK. Now, the next time somebody comes into the table view, anyone in the organization, oh, let me reload it. Ha ha ha. They will see the default view, and the default view does not have last cost. So I just want to see that saved view. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to load, and I'm going to load my last cost. Now, over time, you may have many people customizing views and saving them to the point where when you load, you get a very cluttered list, and maybe someone that designed a lot of views isn't with you anymore, and you want to delete some of those views, and it's pretty easy. So you'll load the view you want to delete. By the way, you can never delete the default view. Counterpoint won't let you do it. So I'm going to load my last cost. I'm going to right click and I'm going to delete. And then it'll bring me up this box and I'll just say delete the last cost view. This is a custom message. You probably get a message that says, oh, are you sure you want to delete? Okay, so now that view is going to be gone. So if I right click and load, there's no more last cost view. Okay, so you can see it just reloaded the lookup. A couple of other features to know about in Counterpoint Table View or when you're in any table view is when you right click and you get this flyout, you can actually hide columns. So if I don't want somebody to see the item number in the default view, I can actually come here and say, hid the wrong column. Let me go over here. Hide column. See how it disappears? Uh-oh, didn't mean to do that. Let me go ahead and reload the default layout without hiding the columns. So I'm just going to come down here and right clicking, reload default. Another thing you can do is you can sort your columns ascending and descending, which is a little more practical and friendly than this guy up here, the A to Z. The A to Z icon only sorts ascending, smallest to largest. So if I want to select my price one column and sort ascending, I'll get smallest to largest. If I right click and sort descending, I'll get largest to smallest. And what's nice is that when you do sort a column, ascending or descending, it actually resorts the entire view, not just that one column. You can also lock columns. So I don't know if you know this or not, but when you're in table view, you can actually edit. You can edit anything that's not protected. Like item number is protected, so you can't edit the item number. But you certainly can edit description, you can edit price, you can edit your categories, your subcategories, your vendor. But maybe you don't want people editing descriptions. So if I right click, I can actually lock the description column. Now, if I'm over here and I right click and I lock, oh, too much clicking, it'll lock everything to the left of where I'm clicking. Oh, let's unlock. There we go. So it locked everything. So I was clicking in the vendor item number field and it locked everything to the left. And you say, oh, I didn't mean to do that. Well, if you come all the way over to the left-hand side of the screen and you right click and unlock, it'll unlock everything to the right of the lock column. Now remember, if you do lock fields, once you're done locking them, you're going to have to right click Save As, possibly default. Another thing that you can do is you can actually fit the columns to the screen. So that was just a right click, fit columns. You could also set default column widths. These are the defaults that came with the software. I kind of like fitting the columns. You can also export your table views. So if I right click and I go to export data, Counterpoint's going to automatically want to export to a CSV file. And what I can do is I can choose a location where I want that file to be, and I can give it a name that has some meaning to me, like item file. And then I'm just going to save. And then if I minimize Counterpoint, it's still sending. See, it's spinning. It's still sending that file out. And then it loves to give me an access violation. By the way, if you get those access violations, just reboot your computer. All right, so here's my saved file. I'm just going to go ahead and open it up. And I'm going to have it be read-only. And there you go. There's my saved CSV file. Okay, I'm going to go back into Counterpoint, back into the item records, and back to table view. Another feature within table view is to enable enter moves right. So right now in table view, when I press my enter key, I'm just going straight to the bottom. I'm just going right to the next line. So if I want to be able to go left to right, I can right click, enable enter moves right, and now when I press enter, it's very linear. It goes from left to right. Okay, so pretty nice to know. I'm going to uncheck that. Another thing that you can do in table view is bulk copy paste. So I have some items that I want to mark as discontinued. And before I show you that, I want to talk a little bit about discontinued. I get a lot of questions about this during training and on support. What's the difference between active and discontinued and inactive? Everything defaults to active. Discontinued will still allow you to sell, purchase, receive, adjust, and transfer the item. Just marks it as discontinued. Inactive will still allow you to sell the item, but will not allow you to place the item on a customer order, back order, or special order, and it will prevent you from purchasing, receiving, adjusting, and transferring the item. So I'm going to go back to my table view. Got to say what I did there first. And so I want to mark several items as discontinued. Well, the first thing I need to do is I need to add the status column to my table view. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to go into Column Designer. I'm going to click on one element, type an S. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Double click on Status. Click OK. And so here I have a lot of active. Now, if I want to bulk copy and paste a discontinued status to these columns, it kind of works backwards in Counterpoint. So I'm just going to use my drop down here and mark one discontinued. So when you bulk copy and paste, you need to start with the items you want to change and end with the item you want to copy. So I'm just going to start here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down my Shift key. And I'm going to down arrow. And if you look over to the left here, you'll see some carets here in the margins. So I'm just going to keep down arrow, down arrow, down arrow. And I'm going to end at discontinued, what I want to change the value to. Then I'm going to right click on a column header and I'm going to copy values. And then I'm going to get a warning, so I'll just say yes. And this takes a moment depending on how many you select. And there we go. Now I want to change it back to active. So I'm going to hold down my Shift key, up arrow, start that again. So Shift, up arrow. I'm going to end with the value I want to change it to. Right click, copy values, and now everything is going to be active. Now you might have some random records. Well, I don't want to do, all these records don't logically live together. There's some here, there's some there. So again, I'm going to start with making one discontinued. And so if I want to select random records, I'm going to hold down my Control key. And I'm just going to click, click, click. And again, if you just watch over here in the margins, click. I want all these to be discontinued. And again, I'm going to end on the value I want everything to become. I'm going to right click on the column header, copy values. And now I'm going to have random records with discontinued. You can also bulk delete in a table view. Now, of course, I don't advocate deleting items because then you orphan the sales history. But perhaps you've got a lot of old purchase requests that you want to get rid of. Or maybe you do have some items that are 7, 10 years old and you don't care about the reporting. So if you want to bulk delete, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to start somewhere. You're going to hold down your Shift key, down arrow, and then you're going to click on this X up here. Now, of course, you cannot delete items that have a quantity attached. So if there's a quantity attached to the item, whether it's positive or negative, Counterpoint will not allow you to delete that item. If I want to delete some random records, Control, click, 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 and then I'm just going to come up here to the X and delete. Now, some tips and tricks for making things a little bit fancier here. If I right click and go into my column designer and I come here to column options, maybe I want to rename the item not number column to SKU. You can do that. So if I click on item and I come over here and I just type SKU, Counterpoint will let me change that column name. Now it only changes the column name in the table view. It doesn't change it everywhere in Counterpoint. If you really want to make a global change and have item number be SKU, no matter where you go in Counterpoint, reporting, lookups, table view, filters, we would do that through something called the Data Dictionary, which will be a webinar that I have in September, how to make those global changes. All right, a few more other fancy things you can do here. I'm going to right click and go back to Column Designer. I'm going to go to Column Options. Now notice here on the right, let me highlight that SKU. Notice here on the right, I have a column title. So there's a title box and then there's a data box. So the title box is only going to affect the column header. The data box is going to affect all the data in that column. So I'm just going to go to Align and I'm going to center align and I'm going to pick a different color and I want a different font. Maybe I want a different font type, font style, and font size. So I'm going to click OK. And then when I click OK again, you can see I've just affected the column header. Now I want to affect the data. So right click, Column Designer, Column Options. I'm going to highlight SKU. Now I'm going to come down to the data. I'm going to leave that left justified. But I want the background color to be blue, and I want the font to be different. So I'm going to get the calligraphy, italic, make it a 12 font. And so you can see how it changes that. Now, I only affected one column, but if you want to make a bulk change, you want to affect all the columns. I'm going to go back into Column Designer. I'm going to go back to Column Options. I'm going to highlight the top column, hold down my Shift key, click on the last column, and now I will be affecting all columns. So let's just say I want to right justify everything, make everything yellow, make everything maybe a 10 font. And then I'm going to come down here to the data. I'll leave that left justified, but I want the color to be blue, and I also want the font to be a 10 font. And so now all the columns have been modified. Another nice thing you can do in the Column Designer, you'll notice I have a column here. Here's a little distracting. I'm going to get rid of it all. Let me reload the default lookups. I'm just going to right click and reload. There we go. Notice I have an item category header here. But because I have shrunk this column down to save some space, the word category is getting cut off. There's a way you can make Counterpoint make that header a little bit bigger so that the item category words will stack. So I'm just going to right click, Column Designer. I'm going to come here to Grid Options, and I'm going to enable multi-line column headings. And so you can see what happened is that now item category fits in this one header. Okay, so that's customizing, saving, recalling a table view. Next, we're going to work with a lookup. Now, a lookup is with a magnifying glass. In my lookup, I can right-click where there's data. So remember, if I'm over here and there's no data and I right-click, nothing happens. Or I can right-click here and go to my Column Designer. Or I can click on this little square here and pull up the Column Designer. Or I can go to Options. It doesn't matter which one you use. It's really which one you remember. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a tracking method to this lookup. So I'm just going to right-click, go to my Column Designer. I'm going to click on one of these columns and press a T. Oh, I want status actually. Let's do an S. I want status. Okay, so here's all my statuses. Now, I really like this, so I do want to save this lookup. So I'm going to go to Options, Save As, and again, Counterpoint is suggesting the default that I save this as the default. And if I save it as the default, it becomes the default lookup for everybody. So I'm just going to give this a name called status. Item, I get out of cap locks, item status. Now the cool thing about a lookup is that all your designed lookups come to live inside of this dropdown. Now these two lookups in parentheses came with your software install, and you cannot delete them. But if you have a lot of lookups and you want to get rid of some of the lookups because it's just kind of cluttering the whole list, all you have to do is call up the lookup, go to Options, and Delete, and that will delete the lookup. Just like in table view, if I want to add color, I want to change fonts, I want to make this item category uh, read in a bigger header, it's just going to be right click, column designer, column options. I can change the names of things. I can change background colors. I can change fonts for the column headers and the data. Or I can come here and do multi-line column headings. That way you can see my item category fits in that one box. Now the beauty about a lookup is that although you can export by right-clicking and exporting data just like you can in table view, you can only export to a CSV file. So you have some more options in your lookups. If you go to Preview, any lookup anywhere in Counterpoint, there's your preview. And when you come up here to this little envelope, you can actually select any of these formats. Like if I want to export to Excel. Now, of course, you have to have Excel installed on your computer. If you don't have Excel, this is not going to work. Notice there's two Excels. One has grid lines and one does not. So this one that says data only will export with the grid lines. So I'm just going to export. I'm going to use this drop down. I'm going to say send it to the application. I'm going to say OK. And I'm just going to skip past any pop-ups. Just OK, OK. And you can see Counterpoint exports to Excel very nicely. Now, if you have color-coded any of your columns, those colors will not export to Excel. So I'm just going to go back in here, and I'm just going to bulk highlight everything. And I'm going to say make all my headers green, make all my data light blue. I'm going to say OK. Now I'm going to go ahead and preview. So my preview will hold the colors, but if I export to Excel, Excel will not hold the colors. However, if I export to Acrobat or Word, that will hold the colors. So I'm just going to export this to Acrobat. Again, I'm just going to skip past all the pop-ups, just OK, OK. And you can see it exported to Acrobat and it held all the colors. And I'm just going to go ahead and reload the default lookup. Another thing to note about the preview is what you see on this screen is exactly what you get in the preview. So I'm going to shrink this description column, and I'm going to preview. And watch what happens in my preview. See how the description is cut off? Oh, and look, that price one, totally not lining up with prices. So it's an easy fix. I'm going to widen up my description column. I'm going to go into my column designer. I'm going to come here to column options and pick price one. And I'm going to, oh, that's the data. I'm going to right justify the column header. Okay, so now when I go to preview, it's lined up a little bit nicer, but see how status is kind of crammed in there next to price one? So we can fix that as well. I'm just going to go back into the column designer. I'm going to choose the status. I already have it status. I'm going to go to column options and choose the status. And I'm just going to right justify everything here, just so it's not squished up against price one. Okay, so now when I preview, much easier to read this. And I might even want to scoot that column over and make it a little bit wider. Another nice thing to know about previews, especially if you have a fairly large document or a fairly large report and you're looking for a particular value, don't forget your binoculars up here. So if I'm looking for, let's say, something that's $720, I can use the binoculars, I can type 720, I can click on Find Next, and Counterpoint finds it. And it can be any value. It doesn't have to be a monetary value. So let's say I'm looking for golf cart. And I click on Find Next. Counterpoint finds the golf cart. Another thing you'll notice about previews is that when you initially go into a preview, you see 1/1 plus, page one of more than one page. So for whatever silly reason, Counterpoint doesn't display the total page number for you until you click on this arrow with the line in front of it. So now I can see I have 4 total pages. And now when I go back to the first page, I can see this is one of 4 pages. Another nice thing to know about the binoculars is Counterpoint will only search the page you're currently looking at and every page after that, and then it stops. So if I have a 100-page report and I'm on page 50, Counterpoint's going to search 50, 51, 52, 53, all the way up to 100, but it's not going to circle back around. So when you start your search, you might just want to start at page 1. Okay. Another thing that we can customize are filters. So it's either the funnel that you might see on a toolbar, or it might be a button. So in this instance, I want to filter on just my discontinued items, because you know what? I'm going to have a sale. I'm going to have a big clearance sale, and I'm going to just corral all my discontinued items on an impact table. I'm going to go into filter, and you'll notice status is not part of this filter. So I'm going to right click, go to customize. Now, it's in really light blue, and it's probably really hard to see. I'm having a hard time seeing it. But right under item category, there's a statement that says, click here to add a condition. So I'm going to click here, and Counterpoint just pulls over the next condition it sees because it's not psychic. It doesn't know I'm looking for status. So I'm just going to click on that, and I'm going to get a drop down, and I'm going to choose status. And status is exactly. Now I could put my criteria here, but it's a little clunky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify the filter because it's easier to use in a simplified state. Right click, simplify, status. Oh, I want it discontinued, didn't I? Well, I have to go back and modify that filter. So let me go right click, customize. So status is exactly, well, it will pull discontinued if I specify discontinued, but what if I want to pull in my discontinued and inactive? Because I'm not going to be selling those inactive items anymore. So here's what I would do. I would say status, and I'm going to change this parameter. So I'm going to just left click on the parameter and get a list. I'm going to say status is not exactly. Now I'm going to right click and simplify, and I'm going to say, show me everything as long as it's not active. So Counterpoint will return any items that are marked discontinued or inactive. So I'm just going to click on OK. And now I just have a list of all my discontinued items. And then I can go into preview and print the list. Now, I really like this list. This is a pretty cool list. I might want to save this filter so I can use it at a later time. That's very simple. Now, usually when I save filters, I don't save them with criteria. I blank out the criteria because maybe the next time I run the filter, I might want to run it for, just discontinued or just inactive. So when you want to save your filter, you're going to right click. You're going to either save it as the default, which I typically would not do, or save it to database. Now, here's the only place Counterpoint does not suggest default because it's a separate switch. So I could just give it, a nice name, active items, or items that are not active. And I'll just click OK. Now, the next time I want to use that filter, I can just go into Filter. I'll typically get the default. I can go to Options or Load, or right-click and Load from Database, and I'll get a list of all my saved filters. And it's SQL, it's unlimited. You can have as many as you like. Now, once you run a filter like this, so here I have a lookup of all my discontinued items. Now, of course, if I exit from here and I go back and I want to get a list, or let me go back to the lookup. If I want to get a list of all my discontinued items, see how it's just going back here to the item status lookup? Typically, it'll just go back to the default, right? So I want to get a list of all my discontinued items. So I know I can go to Filter. I know I can load my filter. I know I can select that filter and then run the filter. And it'll run, maybe. Is not, oh, I got to put the status back. So let me go back to Column Designer so we can actually see. So that was really quite a bit of work. I already had the filter saved, but then I had to add the status back in, I had to select the filter, I had to run the filter. So if you've got something like a list, and it's going to be an ongoing running list, what you can do is design your screen with what you want to see, run your filter, and then save the view. So if I come to Options, Save As, I can call this my discontinued list. And here's the beauty of this. As I mark additional items in inventory as discontinued or inactive, they will automatically appear in this lookup when I use the dropdown. So again, when I come in here, anyone else comes in here, it's default. I want to see all my discontinued inactive items. I just use this dropdown. So I didn't have to redesign the screen, go and call up the filter, click, click, click. It's just a matter of using the dropdown. Another very handy use of this for those of you that track customers, this is a question I get quite a bit. I need a mailing list. I need a mailing list with all my customers that have email addresses. Super simple. I'm going to go into customers. I'm going to come into my lookup. I'm going to redesign this screen because, when I get a list of my customers and email addresses, I don't need all this information. I just want their name and their email address. So I'm going to go into my column designer. This time I'm going to use a little square here. And I'm just going to get rid of everything I don't need. Now I could sit here and click through all of these, but you can bulk remove. So I'm going to highlight one column, hold down my Shift key, highlight the last column, and remove. Nice and easy. Now over here, I just want my email address. So I pressed an E, and now I'm going to scroll down and get email 1, and OK. So now I have a list of all my customers, and only some of them have email addresses. And by the way, a good to know thing about your lookups is there's a control that we set in your software that limits the return in a lookup, and that's for your computer performance. But if for some reason you want to load the entire customer list or the entire inventory list, it's as simple as going to Options and Show All. Now I have less than 200 customers, so my Show All is grayed out. Now what I want to do is I want to refine this list. I only want a list of customers that have an email address. So I'm going to come to my filter. I'm going to right click. I'm going to customize. Click here to add a condition. Oh, first name is not what I need. Let me click again. I'm just going to press an E, email. I'm going to change the parameter to is not empty, and then I'm going to click OK. So now I've run a filter in my custom lookup that only returns customers with email addresses. And what I want to do is I want to save this so I don't have to do this from scratch every single time. So I'm going to go to Options, Save As, and I'm going to call this Customer Email List. And then click OK. All right, so of course the next time I come into this lookup, I'll have my default lookup, but if I want to call up my list of customers with emails, all I have to do is use this drop down, choose Email, Customer Email List, and here we go. And as I add customers with email addresses to my database, they will automatically appear in this custom lookup. One more thing I would like to show you, just a tip and trick about filters. I'm just going to go back into inventory items. And only because I get this question a lot. Gina, I'm here printing my item labels. And yes, I know I have none on hand. I'm here printing my item labels, and you know what? A lot of my merchandise are missing labels, and it's not, all merchandise for a particular category. It's just random items. And so when I do a range of items, Counterpoint returns the craziest results. And that's because computers do not count like you and I count. Computers don't count 1, 2, 3, 4. They count 1, 10, 100, 2, 20, 200, and on and on. So what would be really helpful in this situation is if I could pick a bunch of random items that I need to reticket on my merchandise because it's missing, the barcodes are faded, they need to be refreshed. So there's this little trick called a parameter is called isIn. So I'm going to right click, customize. I'm going to come to between because I don't want a range. And I'm going to choose is in. Now I'm going to simplify this so you can see the results. So now I can choose up to 3 random items. Maybe it's only one, maybe it's only two, but up to 3. Well, you know what, Gina? I really have more like 10 items that I need to pick randomly. Oh, well, that's okay. We can do that. So I'm going to right click, simplify, customize. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this location and I'm going to choose item number and I'm going to choose is in. And then I'm going to come down to item category, choose item number, and then the parameter is in. And notice it's giving and statements. And statements are very restrictive. It means that every item I choose has to have something in common with each other, and that's just silliness. So you want it to be more broad. I want this item or this item or this item or this item. So I'm going to change the first and statement to an or, and the second and statement to an or. And now I'm going to right click and simplify. So now I can have up to 9 random items. I can have 6, I can have 7, I can have 8, but I can also have up to 9. And you can keep adding and adding and adding. This is also true if you're in a report where you want to select multiple categories, and by default, the filter only has category is exactly, and you have, let's say, 50 categories, and you want to see 4 or 5 on the report, you would just change the filter for the parameter category is in, and then you would have up to 3, and then of course you can add category again, change the parameter to is in, and have up to 6, and on and on and on. Okay, so that is customizing views, lookups, and filters. Let's go ahead and return to the PowerPoint presentation. And we'll go from the current slide. So your key takeaways today. And again, you'll get a recording, so I hope you didn't feel like you had to furiously take notes. We learned how to create, save, and recall custom views, custom lookups, and filters. We learned a few tips and tricks about styling and formatting our data columns, and how to export our lookups to a report. So at the end of the session, you'll get a survey. I think that'll come out later today or tomorrow. Feel free to share your feedback. You're allowed to remain anonymous. You can suggest topics for future. Like Debbie, I liked your suggestion earlier today. Or you can go directly to our website and fill out the survey. It's just 3 questions. Yes, no, I agree. So www.cksystem.com/training bytes survey. Training bytes survey. Say that 10 times really fast. Next month, August, and it'll be the first Wednesday in August, I'm going to talk about basic loss prevention. Loss prevention reporting within Counterpoint, loss prevention best practices outside of Counterpoint, and also how to leverage your drawer history to monitor your over and shorts. Because an overage is just as bad as a shortage in the loss prevention world. And with that, I will answer your questions. So let's go up here. Get my toolbar out of the way. Goodbye. And chat. Okay. Okay, so this is a question I already answered. So somebody said, hey, when I go into lookup, I can only maybe see 50 items at a time. I want to see more than that. So that's where you would click on options and show all, and it will load everything. Now keep in mind, if you have a gazillion items, that show all might take a little while to load. There's no way to just say show me 200 or show me 300 without changing the actual control in Counterpoint. And we typically set that control to 200. So if you need to have it set to more than 50, I'm happy to do that for you. But I would never set that control to more than, let's say 500, because it will really slow down the performance of Counterpoint. Okay. Oh, enter moves right made this whole webinar worth it. Well, thank you. That's hilarious. Okay, and show all, we got that. Well, that's all I have. It looks like that's it on the questions. So I guess enter moves right and show all. All right, anyone else have a question? I'll wait just a moment. Okay, well, that's the end of Training Bites. And of course, if you ever need any more detailed, customized training, certainly feel free to contact me. I'm at extension 3. When you call the main number, or my direct line is extension 413. I'm always happy to schedule appointments. And let's see, I got another question in the chat. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. All right. Hopefully, I'll see you next month. Again, the first Wednesday in August, and you'll get an email, signing up. Just a reminder, you can have as many people from your company attend as you like, but I only need one sign up. When I get multiple people from one company signing up, it just makes a massive paperwork nightmare for me. So I only need one sign up, and then that one person that signs up can take the links for the meeting and just forward them to everybody else in the organization. So you can have as many people attend as you like, but just one sign up. All right, that's it. Well, everyone have a fabulous day. Thank you so much for your time.